Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is a very special live screening of the new feature documentary, MLK FBI, in honor of Black History Month, presented by Outside the Box Office, IFC Films, and the USC African American Cinema Society. MLK FBI was recently shortlisted for the Academy Awards Best Documentary Feature category. And I'm going to play the whole film here directly in the webinar. It runs about 102 minutes. And following the film, we'll go directly into a live Q&A with Director Sam Pollard, the Emmy Award winner and Oscar-nominated director, moderated by SCA MFA candidate Nana Adwoa Frimpong. So a very exciting night is ahead. And I'd like to welcome up Victoria Renee from the USC African American Cinema Society to tell you a little bit more about AACS. So Victoria, it's all yours.
Hi, thank you, Alex. Hi, everyone. So my name is Victoria Renee. I am a second-year MFA student in the writing division. I'm also the AACS co-president. And so for those of you who do not know, AACS was founded by John Singleton back in the day, and we support creatives that are committed to uplifting the Black community throughout the diaspora. Last semester, we brought to you screenings, master classes, and we established a scholarship fund for the Black students at SCA. This semester, we will be launching merchandise to support that scholarship. So be sure to follow us on Instagram at USC AACS, and also be on the lookout for our end of Black History Month event, Rising of the Phoenix, this February 26th at 5 p.m., where we will be having a mystery guest speaker. So you definitely want to come and check us out. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Victoria. As we've done in the past, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions. We do ask that you put your questions into the Q&A box, and we'll call on people as soon as we open up the Q&A to the audience. And if anyone out there is comfortable being on camera, we'll welcome you over to be a panelist temporarily, to turn on your video and ask your question live. Otherwise, just put a note for me in there for moderator to read the question, and we'll spare you having to let us into your homes. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy MLK FBI, and please stick around for the Q&A. Hi again. It's now a great pleasure to introduce you to the director of the film, Sam Pollard, and your moderator for the evening, one of our MFA candidates, Nana Adwoa Frimpong. So if you both can please turn on your video and your mics, we'll get started. Hello.
Hello.
And just a quick reminder to everyone before I turn this over to Nana, if you have a question, you can type it up in the Q&A box, and we'll call on people when we open it to the audience. But just remember, there is going to be a moderated Q&A, so you might not want to send questions in too early, because I know that a lot of that material will come up organically. And over to you, Nana. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Sam Pollard. How are you?
Hey, Nana, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you for being here with us. I know it's late for you on the East Coast, so I so appreciate your presence.
Okay.
Yeah. So in the past, you've spoken about how it's always been so important for you to dive into the African-American experience as it relates to the civil rights struggle. So I know that the early beginnings of your journey to this film began when your producer, Ben Hadeen, brought forward David Garrow's book. But can you take us from the moment you read that book to the film that we see now?
After I read the book, I was completely on board with Ben. I thought this should be a film. I mean, I've been, working in this area of the civil rights movement since 1987, when I worked on Eyes on the Prize too, and I did a segment on that show called Two Societies that looked at Dr. King when he went to Chicago and how that really failed. That was another failure. And I would say to you that back then, if I had been doing this documentary back then, it would be a softer less probably intense investigation because I was a younger man and had a different mindset. So when Ben said this is a film, I thought, yeah, this is an opportunity to dig into the complexity of Dr. King's life, but also to sort of demythologize the FBI. So, you know, that's what I've been trying to do with all these films I'm doing now, looking at our experience, really dig into them and look at the nuances and the complexities and not sort of paint these pictures, these films as just black and white.
And can you talk about the workflow? Like, how long did it take to make this film?
Well, after we both read the book, we took an option on the book from David Garrow. Then around 2019, we went to Pittsburgh where David lives, and we brought a camera crew to his house and we sat down with him so he could talk about the genesis of the book and the contents and how, you know, and what he found when he was going through and researching the material. And from that interview, that 4-hour interview with David, we decided we could make a sizzle reel, which we did, a little 3-minute sizzle reel. And then we went out and tried to raise money. We went to Netflix and Amazon and other streaming services. And we got, this was the reaction, Nana. The reaction was, oh, it's a wonderful idea, but we're not looking to fund a film like this now. So basically, you know, most of 2017, most of 2018, we were trying to find money to raise a film. And then in 2019, 2 companies came along, Play Action and Field of Vision, who had been, you know, sort of were interested in the film. They came in with the funding. And we had a great support organization behind us, Cinetic, who was really helping us trying to find the funds. So in 2019, we got the bulk of the money to really go out and shoot the rest of the interviews and bring in an editor and archival producer. And we shot most of the rest of the interviews with Donna Murch, Beverly Gage, Chuck Knox, Andy Young, and Clarence Jones in the fall of 2019. And then we brought the archival producer on in October, November. The editor came on, Laura Tomaselli, who had also cut the sizzle reel. And we started editing in November, December. And then we had to do that recreational shoot that you see in the film of the ephemera of the old reel-to-reel tapes and the images of the FBI listening to Dr. King, or supposedly the FBI monitoring Dr. King. And we shot that the first week of March. And the reality was we shot that in Brooklyn, on the set in Brooklyn. We had rented the stage and built out props and everything. And we finished that shoot in one long 10-hour, 11-hour day. And the next day, New York City was closed down because of the pandemic. And then Laura, the editor, went upstate to her house upstate, and she edited. I would say she continued to edit up until July, when we sent a rough cut to Toronto Film Festival.
You spoke briefly about the folks that you interviewed, Dr. Gage, Donna Murch, etc. Can you talk about how you decided who you wanted to interview?
Well, we knew that we didn't want to interview a lot of people. Two things we thought about creatively from the very beginning. I said to Ben, I don't think I want anybody on camera. I want to do everything voiceover. I had seen a film in 2011 called The Black Power Mixtape. And what I had liked about that film was the Swedish director, Goran, had interviewed a bunch of wonderful people, from Angela Davis to Sonia Sanchez to Harry Belafonte. And they were all voiceover over this fabulous footage from 67 to 75. So I remembered that, and I thought this would be a great way to do that film. And that enabled us not to have a lot of people on camera talking heads. And I said to Ben, we should really be very specific about who we want to interview and talk to. So we knew we wanted to talk to 2 of Dr. King's closest confidants, and that turned out to be Clarence Jones and Andy Young. We knew we wanted to talk to 2 other historians besides David Garrow. So Ben found Beverly Gage, who was a professor at Yale, but who had written books about Hoover and the FBI. And he also found Donna Murch, who was at Rutgers, but she really had written books and done a lot of research about COINTELPRO, the counterintelligence program that had been initiated by the FBI to monitor organizations, not only SCLC and King, but the Nation of Islam, Malcolm X, the Black Panther Party, Angela Davis. So, and then we said to ourselves, it would be good to get 2 former FBI agents So we found Chuck Knox, who was in Texas. And then Ben said one day, why don't we reach out to James Comey? And my first reaction was, he'll never say yes because he just come off of being fired by Trump and probably wanted to stay out of the line of fire. But to my surprise, he said yes. So we were initially going to do an on-camera interview with him, but he wasn't able to do it. So it ended up being an audio interview. And that was the bulk of it, And there was another gentleman, Mark, who was a reporter who we had interviewed when we first interviewed Dave Garrow, but I think he only has maybe one or two lines in the film.
I really enjoyed the voiceover because it really made the experience so immersive because you could really focus in on the archival footage. Okay,
that
cool.
was the idea. That was exactly the idea. You got it.
Cool. So I've heard you also speak about, you mentioned just now about, being grateful that you have made the film now because you can make it in this way. And I've heard you speak about the gift of time when it relates to Clarence Jones and Andy Young, because you don't know if they would have been willing to speak. And so I'm wondering, why do you think that they were so willing to speak now? And would you have made the film if they didn't offer to lend their voices?
Well, I don't think I don't know if I wouldn't have made the film. I would just try to find two other confidants who were alive. I would have went to Jesse Jackson or who else is alive that I could have spoken to. I would have kept looking for somebody who was a close confidant. I wouldn't have given up. But Andy and Clarence are two important figures in that world from the 50s, late 50s and early 60s. So it was a really great get. We initially talked about interviewing Reverend Lowry, but he was too sick. I had interviewed him briefly when I did the film about Maynard Jackson. He wasn't well then, so he wasn't. I don't even think he could talk much by the time that we were thinking about asking him to do an interview for this film.
The film gets at or interrogates, the notion or the idea of MLK beyond his iconic status, as MLK, the man. Mm-hmm. And, the old adage, like, nobody's perfect. I think we like that when we don't have to talk about them, talk about that in relation to the people that we most revere. And so I'm wondering for you, is your film looking to interrogate the notion of the icon? And do you believe that culturally we actually want to know who our heroes are?
No, we don't. Most people don't want to know who our heroes are, because if you look too closely, you see the chinks in the armor, Nana. You see the chinks in the armor. So most people don't want to know. But I am of the opposite mind. I like them to see the chinks in the armor, because that to me is as what did Comey say at the end of the film? He says no man is without. I forgot what he said. The line. Basically, he said nobody walks on water, and that's my attitude. As much as I revere Dr. King, Nana, he doesn't walk on water. He's a human being like me, and he comes with his own flaws. We all got flaws. That's what Comey says. Every human being has flaws, and if you go back and look at the body of work that I've created in the last 5 or 6 years, be it the Sammy Davis film, the August Wilson film, this one. I'm looking at these people who I have a tremendous amount of respect for, but I'm looking at the chinks in their armor, which I think you have to do. You can't tell these stories without doing that now, to me, from my perspective. I mean, one of my favorite musicians, Nana, is Charles Mingus, the late Charles Mingus. And he was not a nice man, but he created, because of all the torment he had in his soul, he was able to create to me some of the most complex, engaging, phenomenal, and sometimes romantic music, tortured music, romantic music. And that's what I like. I like a human being who's got a lot of edges and a lot of sides to them. I mean, because I do. But, there's an interesting thing, too. There's something about these films that I'm doing lately, the Sammy Davis film, the August Wilson film, and this film about King. They're all really kind of touching on my childhood, my upbringing, because 1968, April 2nd, I turned 18 years old. 2 days later, I'm in my parents' apartment in Harlem, East Harlem, and Walter Cronkite, who was the American anchor at that time for the news, comes on and says, Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. Whoa, and so it was like, in African American households back then, I don't know about your household, where you're originally from, but we had three images on our walls in our on our wall in our living room: Martin Luther King Jr., Jesus Christ, and John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Those are the images. So you know how he was respected in our house.
So with that type of respect, how do you even begin to unpack an iconic figure? Like, were you nervous? Did it take a reckoning on your part before you dove in?
The only thing I was nervous about, in all honesty, was dealing with the rape allegation. That Ben and I were both nervous. We knew, first of all, we knew that we couldn't leave it out, because if we left it out, someone would say, well, oh, you guys are trying to really dig into King, but you leave out the whole thing about the rape allegation that had come out a couple of years ago through David Garrow. And then we said, well, if we're going to deal with it, we got to figure out how to make it, how not to make it a sensationalistic piece, how to give it some real sort of rounded context. So when you hear Beverly Gage say, you know, they had those notes about they were looking as this minute, how could they be looking if they're in the other room?
Yeah.
And then she says, you know, what'll be interesting is that you'll find out some things that don't make sense, but some things that do make sense about what's going on in Dr. King's life. That's the kind of duality I like to look at and dig into, you know. So I wanted to be able to sort of envision King as a man who basically, as you saw in that picture, that footage of him as a young man in 1956, doing that first, probably one of the first television newscasts when he's in Montgomery, Alabama, you know, talking about the Montgomery bus boycott, to the man who had the weight of the world on his shoulders by the mid-60s, the leader of the civil rights movement, the man who had done the I Have a Dream speech, the man who knew that he was constantly being watched and surveilled by the FBI and Sullivan and Hoover, a man who knew that he could be killed at any moment. He knew that, you know, a man who had to deal with the fact that when he came out at Riverside Church on April 4th, 1967, against the war in Vietnam, he knew there would be a crack in the armor in terms of his relationship with the Johnson administration. And he even got, as you know, he got backlash from people within the civil rights movement that he had lost his way. Why are you dipping your toe into Vietnam? You should be staying focused on civil rights in America. But he was about not just civil rights, he was about human rights.
Is there something in your research that you discovered that you were surprised by?
Yeah, you know, I was surprised, I forgot this, that in '64, when they took a poll, that J. Edgar Hoover was more popular than Dr. King. You know, my brain thinks that, you know, in 2020, when we were finishing this film, Hoover was not so popular. King was really popular. But I forget that he wasn't so popular in America, because he was looked at as what? A radical. He was looked at, what, as you hear near the end of the film, he was looked at as somebody who was undermining the notion of American democracy, you know. And the other thing that's important to remember is that, as Garrow says in the ending of the film, I was watching it as it was playing, King was not, Hoover was not an outlier. It wasn't like he was just doing something because he wanted to do it. He was basically sort of speaking to what many of the mainstream American public felt about King at that time. So you forget, because now King is like iconic, you know. He was great. Everybody loved him. It's that same, you know, it's that same feeling that people have about Ali near the end of his life. He was revered and loved, but they forget that back in the 60s, when he decided not to go to Vietnam, he was like, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? He was pariah. He was a pariah. Ali was a pariah. First of all, how dare he change his name from Cassius Marcellus Clay to Muhammad Ali, you know? And then he refuses to fight in Vietnam. What kind of American is he? That's why we stripped him of his belt. You know, man couldn't work for 3 or 4 years. People forget that now. Now he's iconic. Oh, Ali. It's America's a very hypocritical nation.
Speaking of Hoover, you know, he had very specific ideas of what America should be, right? White, male, 6 foot, muscles, all of that. And in the film, you intercut with this archival footage images from TV shows and movies of the FBI back in the day and the imaging that you saw. Can you talk about why you chose to do that and what you were saying with that?
Well, one of the things I said to Laura Tomaselli, the editor, as she started to edit, I said, I'm gonna send you a list of old B movies, Hollywood movies about the FBI and how they had been mythologized. So I went home and these are films, man, I had seen every one of these films. Walk a Crooked Mile, I Was a Communist for the FBI, Big Jim McLean, the FBI story with Jimmy Stewart, and the perennial The FBI that was on ABC in the 60s that I used to watch religiously. So I wanted her to use clips from those films to really show you the mythology of the FBI and to use some of that footage to sort of look at how the FBI was monitoring people even in these Hollywood movies, you know, So it was like, okay, let's use some of this Hollywood stuff to show how this mythology had blossomed and blew up and grown and grown and grown in America. Because even in the 60s, man, I thought the FBI was the cat's pajamas. I didn't have a problem with the FBI in the 60s. I thought they were fine. I didn't know about all this stuff about them surveilling King 24/7. You know.
And can you talk to us about the title? Because it's not like the FBI surveillance of MLK. It's MLK FBI. What is your intention behind that?
Well, it was really think about the structure of the film. It's really a parallel story. It's a story about the ascendancy of Dr. King and all he had to confront. At the same time, the FBI saw him as this black messiah who was going to undermine American democracy and the methods they were going to go through to try to, destroy his reputation. And you're seeing this parallel story all throughout the film. And that's why, when we came up with the title, it was really just a working title, MLK FBI, but it just stuck. Some people say MLK/FBI, however you want to say it. It just stuck. It's really these two parallel stories, protagonist, antagonist. Protagonist is King, the antagonist is Hoover and the FBI.
There's talk in the film about, this idea of responsibility. And Dr. Gage even says, because these records are available, it's our responsibility to understand. And I'm wondering for you, as somebody who has made this film and is a mentor and a teacher, what you are saying or what you are offering to filmmakers who will very much make films about the time that we're living in right now and the archival images that are coming out of this time. What is their responsibility in creating those images?
What I would say is don't make agitprop. Don't make films that you're going to say, well, I'm talking to the left, I'm talking to the right. Make films that challenge people's perceptions of everything that we've gone through in the last 6 months. Make films that leads to discussion and debate. Make films where you will be challenged as a filmmaker. Some people have asked me this one specific question: do you feel that this film has done exactly what the FBI was trying to do over 50 years ago? And my answer to it is no, I don't think so, because we're trying to be much more professional and well-rounded in our approach. But that's a question that needs to be asked. Someone's already asked me, how come you didn't dig into who really shot Dr. King? Well, that wasn't the film we were going to make. If I make another film about that, maybe I will dig into the fact, maybe it wasn't James Earl Ray, maybe it was this conspiracy that William Pepper has talked about. Someone else has sent me an email saying, you didn't really, dig into J. Edgar Hoover and his very dark life. Well, I said no, because I'm not quite sure there's any facts about him being homosexual with Clyde Tolson. If you send me a book with its facts and documentation, I'll make the film.
In 2027, more of the records will be released for public consumption. How do you feel about that? Should they be? Well, I guess they are. So
here's my answer. If the FBI submitted to the archives the unedited tapes, we may hear things about King's strategies in these different cities when he was with people like Andy Young and Clarence Jones and Ralph Abernathy and Dorothy Cotton and others, about his strategies in Albany or Birmingham or Montgomery or in Selma or even in Chicago. if they only sent the archives, the edited tapes, the stuff that the salacious stuff that they felt that was going to destroy Dr. King, then shouldn't be released. And maybe someone should go in there and listen to some of those tapes before they're actually released to say, well, this shouldn't come out to the public, or this will be fine.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, but Chuck Knox, a former FBI agent, maybe he knows something I don't know, but he doesn't think they should be released.
Yeah, that's another film. So I do want to open it up to the fabulous people on the call, but before we do, I do have one final question for you.
And who are all those pictures on your wall?
Oh, there's Zadie Smith, Solange, Alice Walker, Brian Stevenson. The list goes on.
Are you a film student?
I am a film student. I'm in the MFA program.
What year are you? 2 years, second year?
Yeah, second year out of 3 years.
Have you had, what's his name who's the black professor there that I interviewed for Sammy Davis? He's not he's sort of a social cultural critic.
Professor Boyd.
Yeah, that's
Professor
right.
Boyd. No, I've had the pleasure of meeting him in the elevator, but never been taught by him.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
So you want to be a director?
Yes, director, writer, producer.
Good.
Yeah. So there are clear parallels between the 1960s and now, as we see in the film. Surveillance, the notion that Black people are inherently dangerous, the list goes on. And in the film, Andrew Young says, we just wanted America to be what America said it was supposed to be. And and in a way with your film, you are reaching back to tell the story of right now. And so I'm interested as a documentarian and a citizen, what are the claims for hope that we can still make? What does hope still look like at this time?
Hope means that the struggle will always continue, that you can't just rest on your laurels and think that, okay, we made some advances and then everything's going to be all right, because it doesn't work that way. Just look at what the states are doing now, in many of the states now with their voting laws. They're trying to tamp down on the voting laws so people of color won't be able to vote. Instead of having, when during the years of segregation, you had to go and read the Constitution, you had to go read the Bill of Rights or something to be able to vote, or they would just turn you away. But now they come up with other ways to try to to tamp down the vote. So we all have to remember that the struggle for freedom, the struggle for equality in America is a constant one, and you can never let up. That's the only hope I can give people. You can never let up. So it's a long, hard tussle.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I so appreciate your time and the generosity of your answers. Alex, when you're ready.
Absolutely. A lot of our questions that have come in, they just want us to read them. So we'll hold off for a second on bringing anyone over. But there was a couple of questions about archival footage. One in particular saying that you worked very hard to use unfamiliar, lesser seen footage throughout. How difficult was that to accomplish? And I'll just tack that on to this other question about if you had any challenges with the archival footage, and if it was fair use, did you license? How did that come about?
Well, anytime you bring on an archival producer, you give them a list of stuff that you want. A lot of the stuff I had used and seen before in other films I worked on. But if you find the right archival producer, hopefully they'll turn up material that you've never seen before. So for example, the footage of Dr. King with Coretta and their kids and his parents in that basement or playroom, I had never seen that footage. The footage of James Earl Ray under arrest, that's grainy. I'd never seen that footage. The stills of Dr. King at the dinner table and playing softball with his son, that footage, those stills I'd never seen before. The audio of Johnson talking to King, talking to one of his assistants about what to do with King after he won the Nobel Peace Prize, knowing about his very complex personal life. The audio stuff with Johnson and J. Edgar Hoover, never heard that stuff before. So that's what you're looking for. You're looking to find that kind of stuff. Now, what we try to normally do is we try to license most of the material. The challenge with the King material, as people may know or may not know, that the King family feels that anything where Dr. King was documented by ABC or NBC or any other, they own the rights to his image. So they always want to be paid. So we felt that, from our perspective, that's not right. They shouldn't be paid just because they think they own the rights of his image. So we fair use some of that material. And you always have to get a fair use lawyer to sort of appraise how much of it you can use to get away with it. What's the context it's being used in? Is it being used in a journalistic context to make it fair use? So those are always issues, and documentary filmmakers are doing it more and more nowadays because archival footage costs a lot of money. They become more and more expensive, so sometimes you got to figure out other ways to try to get them into your film.
We have another question that says, from Benny Blades, what became of the FBI informant mentioned in the film?
There's two. One is the gentleman who worked in the SCLC office, and he's alive and well, and he lives in Atlanta. And Ben had suggested we go knock on his door, do one of those, what I call 60 Minutes things with Mike Wallace, where you knock on his door, you got the cameraman behind you. He opens the door, he says, Mr. Jones, we know you worked for the FBI, but you worked, So but I kind of I'm gun shy about doing that kind of stuff. So we didn't do that. And the other gentleman was the photographer, Ernest Withers, who shot the fabulous still I Am a Man, and also the still of King and Abernathy on the bus in Montgomery. And he passed away, but there's another filmmaker who's finishing up a documentary about Ernest Withers now that may come out, I think, in the summer.
Yeah. The next question we have from Mary Lene. Do you think this film will lead to other files about civil rights leaders coming out?
Excuse me. It depends if somebody wants to make a film. I mean, there's already as you know, there's a documentary already out that Dawn Porter did about John Lewis, but there'll probably be another one. I mean, the thing to remember with all these figures in our lives is that if they are Dr. King or Malcolm X, people will be making films about them, writing books about them, because there's always new ways to look at the new angles of approach in terms of how to approach them. And if there was a file on Malcolm X, which there obviously was, and somebody can get those files released, we may find some interesting things that could lead to another film about Malcolm.
Yeah.
Sure.
From Stephen Buss, we have, why do you think that Hoover held the post of head of FBI so long?
Because nobody could displace him because he had files on everybody. He had the keys to the kingdom. He could blackmail anybody, but you see that nobody can have a lifetime job like that in the government anymore. That's just not possible. But it was possible for him. I mean, he was the FBI director through 8, 9 presidents or something. Whew, that's a long time.
Yeah. Next question we have is the FBI required to release what they have on MLK in 2027, or can they delay the release to a later time?
I don't think they can delay it, but someone else could. Maybe the King family or someone could file a suit to delay it. Sure. Mm-hmm. Somebody might.
Next, we have a bunch of questions. Okay. Petreni Reader says, have you heard of any woman coming forward? Is there any record of any woman that Dr. King had relations with coming forward?
No, not that I know of. I doubt that anybody will.
Yeah. Okay, so you discussed, this is from Diana Fonti. You discussed how this film is similar to your recent work by taking a more nuanced look at iconic figures. Mm-hmm. How is this film different from your previous work? Will it take your work in a new direction in the future?
I try to change up stylistically on every film I do. I mean, I have another film that's playing now on HBO called Black Art in the Absence of Light. And that one, we do have people on camera talking, and we have artists working in their shops and stuff, their workshops and stuff. So that's a different approach. And we came up with a different way to shoot the artists and shoot the historians, the art historians, and the art critics. So yeah, they, depend on what the subject is and how I think I want to tackle it.
From Nathika, we have, given the events that have occurred since you made this documentary, especially the January 6th insurrection, is there anything you would have focused on or framed differently?
No, because when you watch this film, it's like looking at a two-way mirror. You're seeing America today. It's amazing, sad and amazing.
Yeah. How do you think Dr. King would feel if he could see your film?
I don't know. I don't know. That's a hard question. How do I know? I don't know. If I, it'd be like if someone made a film about me and I'm still alive. I don't want to see it.
From Nthika again, we have, did you have any interactions with the King family while making this film?
No, we stayed away from them. We stayed far, far away. Now they've reached out to us though.
They did reach out, you said.
Since the film's getting so much play now, so much exposure, yeah, sure. They want to get paid. They want to get paid, They haven't said cease and desist. They just want to get paid. But that's why you have what's called errors and omissions insurance to deal with people who come after you for money.
From Raj Vora, we have, can you throw some light on Gandhi's influence on Dr. King?
Sure. I mean, I always done it, because Gandhi was a non-violent activist, who was trying to get his country free from under the tentacles of the British Empire. And King studied Gandhi, and he felt that was a tactical approach that made sense, non-violent protest, and which, as you know, he was a big supporter of through his whole life, non-violent protest.
I have another question about similar vein from Karen Loveman. Can you speak to MLK's friendship or relationship with Malcolm X?
I don't think they had a friendship. I mean, from all I know from the books and the stories I've told, that they were both men who had a mission, and I'm not sure Malcolm had a tremendous amount of respect for King before he left the nation. But then he understood, on some level, he started to maybe, this is my, I don't know really. I guess he's the sort of, maybe there was some room for him to have a different take on King. Not that I think that he was into the idea of nonviolent protest. I don't think Malcolm was into that. That was not his philosophy. Not even when he left the nation.
Another question from Mary Lene, who asks, was the fact that both Ava DuVernay and Spike Lee, the fact that they spoke about the infidelity of MLK and the FBI involvement in their films, any type of motivation or inspiration to you for this project?
What film did Spike talk about MLK's sexual life? What film was that?
In Malcolm X, called out.
In Spike's Malcolm X film? He had talking about King. I think they're mistaken. They're talking about Elijah Muhammad. Not in Malcolm Spike's film. It was Elijah Muhammad. I don't think, no, because I don't quite. I was, before we got on this phone call, I was supposed to be doing an interview with David, what's his name, Orello, who played Dr. King.
Yellow.
Oh, Yellow,
yes. Yeah.
And I'm going to rewatch Selma before the weekend. And I don't remember them. Oh, I do remember. They did send the tape to his house in that film. Yeah. No, but no, it didn't. I didn't think about those films at all. The only film that really influenced me was the Black Power mixtape.
Alphonse has a question.
Alphonse.
Yes, we'll do a couple more. What were the strongest feelings you felt while creating this film?
The strongest feeling I always feel, Nana, is, damn it, can I make it work?
Yeah.
Can I make it work? Oh God, every time, this feeling, Nana. You look at the first cut and you feel this pit, this hole in the pit of your stomach. You say, oh God. this is going to be terrible. Maybe I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, did I take off more than I could chew? Oh no. That's always the feeling when you're making the film, the first cut. You know, you say, oh God, this is terrible. That's every time. But the difference is 20 years ago, my old terrible would lead to me going into some kind of like mini depression and oh my God, I'm terrible. I'm a horrible filmmaker. I'll never live again. I'll never make another film. I don't feel like that anymore. You know, I'll say, oh, this is terrible, but I'll say, okay, let's get to work. That's all.
Yeah. I'm glad that the feeling goes away.
Well, I've been in the game a long time now.
Yes. Okay, we'll do 2 more questions. So, what was the reaction of the general public around the country from the riots looting after MLK was assassinated? And was it similar to the reactions of the general public after George Floyd, Breonna Taylor were killed?
Yeah, it's always the same. It's always the attitude. It's always the attitude, well, why do these peaceful protests lead to violence, lead to riots? Because people just get fed up.
Yeah.
You know, they just get tired, you know? Everybody's not going to say, well, okay, let's have a kumbaya moment and hold arms, hold hands. You know, they get fed up. But, you know, and you know, you hate to see our people destroying their own communities, you know, but some, you know, but it's this anger that just kind of it explodes.
Yeah.
It explodes.
Do one more question, and this is from LaDeja Brisbane. Did your ethics or morals ever conflict in putting together the film to portray what you wanted to your audience?
No. You know, I would say this very clearly. If anything, when I'm making a film, my ethics and morals are very high. You know, probably higher than in any other part of my life. You know, and no, it didn't get. I mean, no, I have a pretty strong standard about what I want to say and how I want to say when I'm making a film. You know, and I'm never going to make a film where I'm going to do something that I don't feel like I can support.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Todd Boyd, that's right. Somebody said Todd Boyd.
Todd Boyd, yes.
Todd Boyd, my man. So Alex, you got 2 posters behind you, man, of one of my favorite filmmakers.
Oh, fantastic.
You know, 8.5 is one of my treasures, man. The opening of 8.5 is one of the great openings of all time filmmaking. And La Dolce Vita is, wow.
This is my subtle propaganda to get people to watch more Italian cinema. Oh,
they should, man. You know another film you should watch, The Great Beauty, man.
Oh, absolutely.
The Great Beauty.
Yes.
But you know what I just showed my class tonight? I showed Black Narcissus. You guys seen that film?
Oh, I haven't seen that.
That's 1947. Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger. You know, beautiful film. All shot on a set. They're supposed to be taking place in the Himalayas, but it was all shot at Pinewood Studios by Jack Cardiff. Fabulous, beautiful film. Beautiful film. And so, if you don't know Powell and Pressburger's films, you guys should see The Red Shoes, A Matter of Life and Death, The Life and Times of Colonel Blimp. Fantastic films. But next week, I'm showing, Nana knows this film, The Oversimplification of Her Beauty. You know that film, Nana? You know that film, Alex? Terrence Nance's film?
Yeah, we had Terrence join us for Random Acts of Flyness last semester.
Yeah, I'm showing that to my class next week, man. That film is fantastic. Fantastic. I'm telling you, you know, one of the treasures of my life is movies. Even now, I love movies. All right.
Well, thank you so much. I know it's late, but I could listen to the 2 of you for hours. This was really wonderful. And
so are you a film student too, Alex?
I run the film programming. So all of our guest conversations, filmmakers, and, you know, when we're on campus, a lot of movie screenings in the theaters.
That's a nice campus, that USC campus. I was there when I shot Todd Boyd on that campus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you're welcome back anytime as soon as this thing's over.
Yeah, that's a nice campus. I like it. It's like a movie studio when you go into that campus. All right, folks. Have a good night. Take care.
Thank you both so much.
My
Good night.
pleasure. Bye.